Author Wisdom Podcast today with Azul Terronez. He is CEO and co-founder at Authors Who Lead. We had a quick convo about Azul's Mexican heritage and about him being a high accomplisher, because you're going to see he has a lot of um, nice experiences and I would call them milestone achieves under his belt. I'm curious about the ambition and all of that. We're going to get into that later on in the interview. But before we do, Azul, can you quickly introduce yourself and tell us about Authors Who Lead?
Yeah, so like you said, my name is Azul, which is an interesting name already because it means blue, and people actually called me blue when I was growing up. But Authors Who Lead is a company that we built with my partner, Steve, that is designed to help authors come with their idea and leave with a manuscript in 6 months so that they get their book done if they're planning to write it on their own, which most leaders are so busy. They're like, I don't know how I'm going to get this done and still run my business. And I say, if you can block out 20 minutes in a day, you can write a book in 6 months. It just means that you have to be diligent during the writing process and be committed to every step. It's like preparing for anything you're training that's big. It's consistency, accountability, and action. And then we also, Authors Who Lead also has an imprint, or actually 2 imprints for publishing. It's Mandality Press, as well as Rockrose Press, which is a fiction press. So, and I tend to coach people who are high performers, influencers, YouTubers, leaders in the space. So, because they tend to need to go to someone who understands their needs. So that's the purpose and what I do. People usually call me a book whisperer or something like that. Help them bring about their book.
Interesting. I want to start where the serotonin is. So you've probably heard that Scribe Media closed down not so long ago. Why do you think that is?
That's a great question. I'm so glad you're asking it. I do know plenty of people at Scribe. I don't have the intel. I wanted to let them kind of heal through whatever's going on for them personally before I just dive into tell me what's going on. But what we observed is they were pushing out a lot of cash to pay for these employees and a building and a space. And when there's fluctuations of people not rushing to get books ghostwritten, where the majority of your revenue comes from, I think it makes it difficult to support those people when you don't have revenue to support them. So I think that's one thing. And also they're not a traditional publisher, so they're not billing royalties on the other end of their things. So they didn't want to do that because it's a hassle. It's a long-term commitment. And so I think there's that. And it's just like, I think it's just a cash imbalance. I think they just didn't have the cash to support when they didn't have, they were spending money to recruit these really big editors and designers from big traditional publishers, but they didn't have nearly the revenue that's coming in as other big publishers do have.
Right. It's quite surprising, right, to see that an agency can be taken down by payrolls and rent. Well, I mean, that's what we suspect is at play here. And the second thing that's surprising to me is that their model is about MRR. By the way, this is nothing against them. Like me, I'm fully in support of business owners. I know that this is a hard thing, like it's always hard to run businesses, but yet their CEO also looked really qualified for the job. But when you charge 8K a month MRR, isn't that like enough cash flow, or isn't that was not what was happening? Because like 8K MRR per client, let's say that you have 50, right? That's like 400K a month. So I'm quite surprised that
if you take a traditional editor, and the way acquisition editors work at big publishing houses is that acquisition editors on the hook to get it to be a certain performer and a portfolio. So the editor's job is tied to performance, right? Editors, if you're just going to pay them what they could be making somewhere else, you have to pay them what they're earning there. But now there's no motivation for them. There's no performance metrics for an editor or a ghostwriter, because you're not looking at how many sales will the book make. You're just trying to get the book done at the high quality. And when you recruit enough top 5 editor, writers, coaches from big industry, you have to pay them, and your payroll alone is in probably closer to 7 figures a month. And that's difficult to have profit on the other end.
Right. How do you induce performance? What would be the performance metric there, because if I ask myself that question, it'll be on the completion of the book, and yet have them gain a share of the book and of the possible royalties. And yeah, let's start with that one. Like, how would you induce that KPI to make sure that you don't have $1 million payroll on a monthly basis?
Yeah. And I can't speak for Scribe. I do love Scribe. Zach Obrunt has been a wonderful supporter of Authors Who Lead over the years. And before they had a coaching program, we were their premier coach. They sent their people to us. So I do appreciate them. I think we chose, even though people said they didn't think it was wise to have royalties for our publishing company, was because the long-term success of a book requires someone to give it continual attention. And most authors have business to run, things to do. Unless their book is the leverage they're using, they tend to just be distracted. So our job is to keep them motivated around their book, keep them focused on asking for reviews. But we're incentivized because the more they sell, the more money we all make. Same reason why we'll run ads on Amazon, because we're trying to get to a break even and then we get profit after that. Right. So we're constantly thinking about this. Doesn't mean there's a lot of big money, because we're not signing David Goggins, on, but either were they just wrote the book. They got a nice, probably, $100K check to write it or whatever. And then they didn't participate in the millions of dollars of revenue, though. A traditional publisher did. So like, I think that's Tiffany Haddish's book. All these other great books. It's great to track other people, but it didn't necessarily, it's not necessarily helping them with any. The only way I can see incentivizing it is having people who are editors get paid for every acquisition of a new client. Then there's at least an incentive for them to go look for new clients. If there's not, then they're just going to do their job, because what's the incentive? What's the benefit? I'm not getting anything as a result of the number of sales anymore. So yeah, I don't know. And I don't know enough about their back end to know how that works. Their profit margins, their costs are high and they kept eking up, which is fine. But then you have to maintain that level of clients, right? Someone paying 50K every month, or getting enough clients every month at that level takes a considerable amount of effort. Now you're paying salespeople and they take part of the cut, right? So there's all these factors involved.
Right. And that was my next topic, with home runs like David Goggins' book, which is phenomenal. Although the audio version is always a bit sloppy. But anyway, that's my opinion on it.
I didn't like the audio version. In fact, I couldn't finish listening. I was like, it's too interruptive. I want to hear the story. I don't want to hear your opinion.
I just want to hear Goggins, anyway. And I have just a bit more hint on that one. So it's not monthly that they charge. It's like one big chunk, 24K, 48K, 135K. What might have happened in there, I'm gonna take a shot in the dark. Usually accurate. It's just the cash flow and the sales cycle. So what might have happened is that they might have signed a bunch of authors at some point, and then the inflation and all of that, like people are a bit more frisky to write books nowadays. Maybe you can confirm or infirm that, but that was maybe like 2 months ago. And in sales, we have the sales cycle, and you only realize it like 1 or 2 months after. Oh shit, I didn't do enough sales 2 months ago, so that these sales close now. And then you have the payroll, and then it all comes crashing down. Are people still down to write books nowadays, or have you seen it slow down a little bit?
I've seen the slowdown around people who are thinking about writing a book but don't have any business. That is definitely slowed, because every discretionary thing for people who don't run a business is down. But for business owners who know that they're going to write a book, who have it in their budget, who know that it's important because they're going to build a coaching platform, or they're going to pivot in their business, or they're going to execute some authority so they can get paid to speak, they're just using it like any other business expense. They're calculating the risks and the values, and as everyone else slows down, they speed up. So I think, because I tend to work with a very niche group, those are people who are leaders. That's why we have our company called Authors Who Lead, because we were getting a lot of people in who just wanted to write books. But when we started focusing on leaders, be like, oh, I'm not a leader. I'm like, okay, this is not for you then, because the perception is I'm doing this for something bigger, and I have a mission, or I have money to invest. That for us has kept this niche. But you're right. If if we wane in any given months, we feel the effect 6 months from now, not this month, because making a commitment that large of an investment means you're going to have to nurture them and really, or your referrals alone, which I prefer a referral business over chasing it. Because if you can't, nail that, or that shifts on you, or the prices go up on your ad, it doesn't mean I don't think you should do that, run ads. I just think it's so much better for us long term for us to be the referral business, because our leaders know other leaders just like them, and then we do less of the work, so we service them in such a high level that there is no other option. They always refer us. We want them to always talk well about us, and every time we don't perform or something's not right, we ask them their input, and then we make adjustments as quickly as we can for the next client. So that's how we're helping. That's how we're staying ahead of it. But we've been in this for 7 years, and that's about a little shorter than Book in a Box was, and then Scribe. So they grew, we were like, oh, we're just this little mom and pop group, la, da, 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 da. And they went, shoo, took off. And we stayed sort of very small, but we're growing steadily over time. So I think we're just staying the course. We're the tortoise in this race, I would say.
Right. Running a business is quite hard. What I would do, and this is what I do with some of my agencies, I don't put my eggs in one basket. I have many models. So one is like full commission. I take a percentage of, let's say, the sales that you do. Another is that you pay me for meeting. Another one is hybrid. So you pay me per month plus a price for meeting. And the other one is Scribe-like, is like pure month to month, or 3 months commitment, or 6 months. So that, yeah, like cash flow is still in, and I have collateral, and I have long-term revenues and so forth. Then what I do to minimize my payroll nowadays, this year I had to let go a bunch of employees at the beginning of this year, and I have GPTs just helping me and assisting me. Yes, it's more time on my end to do the automation and all of that, but I do think it already pays off, and it's way more peace of mind for me, because employees are really hard to manage. And you can
Yeah.
see in Scribe's case, I don't think they give a fuck about Scribe, to be honest. That's my point of view. I think they're all about me, and that's how employees react. Give me my severance package, give me my therapist. Like that's what I saw on their page. I mean, I have quite a harsh opinion about that, because I've went through it. I've had the employees also turn their back on me, while I didn't do that to them. But I'm trying to remove myself from the employee equations, because they have emotions. Most of the time they don't give a crap about you. They just want to be paid and go on with their own lives, which I also respect.
Yeah.
But what do you think about that GPT model applied to writing books? Because I'd love to launch a business that does that this year. Literally copy paste how Azul writes, for example. Copy paste all your content, summarize it, make it into a nice book. Do you think that's possible / viable?
I think it's definitely possible and viable. Long term, though, I think it may be, for if I were trying to mitigate against what could come, is if Amazon, for example, creates some sort of tool that scrubs anything that was AI written based on some algorithm, and they decide to take down all your books, it could be detrimental. So you got to think long term. Don't think about, because now everyone's like, yeah, God, if someone could just write my book, and it's a lot cheaper than a scribe, and this guy for $5,000 will write my book. That's awesome. That sounds alluring. But if the long term AI, we don't know how Amazon will react, because they want to protect their integrity of the books getting published, then you got to think about that. The other thing is, we're all selling sunshine, even us leaders who are writing books. We're not talking about anything new under the sun. Eventually, AI is going to be so wise that it's going to have all of our knowledge. So it's going to sound like everyone else, even if you're the expert. So you've got to be like, what's going to make you different more than what makes you smart? So you're going to have to think of ways to be telling more stories, telling more, like it can help you improve your writing, just like Grammarly improves your writing, but you shouldn't use it as the content, like, because it won't know how to position you as unique. It'll only know how to, based on what it knows, to make you unique. But you're the only individual out of the trillions of possibilities that got birthed. And so I think that's where the long term, short term, yes, I think there's money to be made. If you're trying to build a business over long term, I wonder, maybe there's a way to do it where you can conclude those things so that you don't, push yourself out of an opportunity you thought you were creating.
Right. I don't think Amazon's gonna ban AI content, because in the end, what's your, like, what's the real proof, right, that an AI wrote it? What if I decided, me, the human, to write like an AI, and then it's like this
I
very
think
tricky
that's
thing.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
and also, like, I do think that AI is capable of scraping all Charles content, let's say, from, because I write everything really publicly on my LinkedIn, on my Twitter. I have a Trello board. There's this app called Rewind app that obtain like 37x their valuation, the money that they were supposed to be evaluated at. They make like 5K MRR, and they got funded for like 50 not so long ago. And what they do, they record your whole screen and the voice and everything. It's really Big Brother-ish, but
Yeah.
they take all that data, and then the hopes would be that they would write for you, so they would know the Charles story, basically, what I've lived throughout my life, because I document pretty much everything. And then it
Yeah.
would write on X topic. In sales, it's also like they take my stories, they take your stories, and it tries to unite us together with a message saying, hey, Azul, we've got this in common, right? Mexico, for example, Guadalajara, we both went to there. But yeah, I have a couple of questions with everything you just mentioned. First, I want to talk about the mental model behind books. Is it still like this business card? Because to me, a book is something intimate. I have my bedtime reading, and if I keep on reading your book every night, I'm developing this special relationship with you, these emotions. And for example, right now I'm reading a book about a journalist that got kidnapped by Somalian pirates. It is really good, and it helps me sleep well. I don't know why.
Hmm.
Is that still the mental model behind books?
Well, I have a different opinion. I never actually saw books as business cards. I saw them as an opportunity to stay in front of someone longer. Um, because if you hand someone a book, they might just throw it on their desk. They might put it on their shelf, but it's really hard pressed to throw a book away. You're like, oh man, there's a book. So you hang around a little longer, but it doesn't necessarily shift them, because books. Here's my thing. Books. This is why I have this concern about AI. In my opinion, books aren't words. Books are messages that words contain. And if you think that somehow writing a book with just information is going to move someone laying at bed at night, I think you're misunderstanding the point. People don't talk about what's in a book. They talk about what a book make them feel. So if they don't talk about your book outside of the book, then it doesn't matter. And they're not sharing the exact words, right? They're sharing the way they learned or felt or experienced it. So if the book doesn't do that, it doesn't matter that chat can do it. Because if you're not turning the page at night, it doesn't matter. Think of all the books you bought, even by the bestsellers that you bought but never finished. And those are best-selling books. So the hardest hurdle is getting someone to continue to turn the page. And that's why the story matters, right? That's why the connection, this feeling of like intimacy matters. That matters way more than the length of the book, the expert of the book. Otherwise, we would go universities and dumpster dive for textbooks written by the experts of the world, but we don't, because we're not needing more information. We're needing a guide, someone we can trust, someone who gets us. That's what AI can't do. They can mimic your voice, but if you don't know how to connect with somebody with what you're writing, don't expect AI to be able to do it either. So like they can't synthesize that beautiful connection you described, laying there in bed and going, I really enjoy it. That's the magic place where people miss. And that comes from within a person. It doesn't come from the information that you store there.
Right. As you were saying that, I was thinking of Goggins' book as I was shoveling heavy snow in Canada, a full driveway of it, and listening to Goggins. And I eat once a day, so I was like hungry. I was like 6 p.m. and it was already dark in Canada. And I was
Mhm.
listening to Goggins' story, and that's the genius behind his book. And I had a little laugh internally, because I imagine a Goggins GPT that says shit and fuck all the time. that
Exactly.
Oh my god, that'd be quite funny. But you're so right. It's this emotional connection. That's what page turners are. And in Goggins' case, I can relate so much as an ultra athlete. And yeah. Next question though, that is still in my mind. You mentioned Amazon. I guess Amazon's still like the best front end in terms of funnel. For example, Will It Fly by Pat Flynn is a book that I read on Amazon, and I think it was Kindle Unlimited, if I'm not mistaken. So tell us about a bit more about the Amazon platform to get your book out, because I'd also want it on my website, and possibly free for a bunch of folks, because I want to give, I want to educate. And tell us about the Kindle Unlimited strategy in there.
Yeah, I think Kindle Unlimited works really well if you're going to have multiple books, because you get paid for page turns, right? So the more books you have, the more chances you have. And if 70% of sales for digital books are on Amazon, it's not a bad play. Yes, you're leaving 30% if you ignore Barnes and Noble, Kobo, other places. However, Kindle Select does have limitations, right? If you enroll in those programs, you can't necessarily, have them work. Like your book can't be sold other places because you're giving them exclusivity. That's why they're giving you this benefit. So if you start to do the KDP Select as the publisher, then you limit your ability to sell on your website or you can sell other places, but you can't then become a competitor of Amazon in some regard. So you have to weigh out your decisions. So I think that's what I would think about is if you're not going to sell anywhere else, Amazon using the Select is great. But if you intend to go broad, then you're going to have to decide. And the real benefits are you get to run a promotion and free promos, every 3 months for 5 days, give it away for free and stuff like that. But if you want to give it away for free on your website, then you couldn't if you're in that program, the Select. So, how much is a lead worth to you versus how much, $2.99 on Kindle? It depends, right? A lead might be worth way more, and it might be more incentive to give the book away on your site for an opt-in versus, somebody who buys it, you don't know who they are. You can put links in there to draw them off, but the percentages are not really high unless the value is really high. I see a lot of authors give away the audiobook as, they opt in for free. Then people would join because that's a high value for they just got to give their name and they get but that's what it takes to draw them off of Amazon and finally get to know who your buyers are. So those are the things I would consider if I were putting a book on Amazon as this, independent person.
Right. Let's finish up with this last question, like about the ambition. Like, why are you so ambitious? What pushes you to accomplish on a daily basis?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that I would even say I'm very ambitious. I think I'm more patient than ambitious because I didn't start the entrepreneur journey until I was almost 50 years old. Until like I was a traditional, educator and principal for years. So I had been running that marathon for a while. And so when I got into entrepreneurship, I tend to be more steadfast and take my time and do work I want and let go of work I don't like just for money. Cause I'm like, life's too short to hustle for money. I want my freedom. I want my joy. I want to love the work I do. I want to make an impact in the world. And to do that, my ambitions are through relationships. So getting a TED Talk, for example, wasn't something I was ambitious for. Somebody reached out to me because I know them. Actually, Charlie Hohen, who was Tim Ferriss's first employee, and I were connected. Charlie and I were friends, and he invited me to do an introduction to this guy that's how I got a TED Talk. So it's not ambition. It just sort of kind of keeps happening. And I think I do that through relationships and committing to these people who have a high value in the world, and their circle is very small. And when you take good care of them, they introduce you to their small circle. That's how I've done it. Not so much. I work hard. I'm really good trying to crush it, because people always ask me, hey, can you help me get my TEDx to crush? I'm like, no, it's called ideas worth spreading. That's the only way to get this to go viral, not you hustling to make it work. I do nothing for it to have 3 million views. I haven't done a thing. I did my work when I stood on stage, and that's it. So I think I try to help people understand that value as opposed to some sort of ambitious intent.
Love it, man. Thank you so much for round 1 today, because I'd love to do a round 2 and 3 and 10 eventually. You're a really cool guy, really vibe with your message and your personality. Where can people find out more about you, Azul?
Yeah, you can go to authorswholead.com. And if they listen to podcasts, find Authors Who Lead wherever you kind of listen to podcasts. That's probably a great way to do it, because you can hear me and get to know about me.